All hail the power of Jesus' name, let angels prostrate fall. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Let every tongue.
Welcome to the Tag Your It podcast. I am Ray Ray.
I'm Dave, and I'm here in studio for the first time in 21 days. So
21
praise
days, and
praise God, it's good to be here.
We're glad to have you in the new studio.
Well,
and
thank you.
And it's awesome. So we got together with. Oops, I pulled myself out. So I'm having a little technical difficulties because...
Well, last week, Adam got together with the two newest members of the TAG team.
Yes, the TAG. We're calling it the Fellowship of the TAG.
That's right. I love it. It's good stuff.
Yeah, so being in the new studio, I have direct access to the front door, and I had to do something. So that's why there was a little bit of craziness at the front end. But anyway, thank you guys for being with us this evening on the Tag Your It podcast. And again, bringing Dave back. And we wanted to...
What a blessing it is to be here.
Yeah, and
Always.
we wanted to have an awesome, just down-to-earth, Tag Your It style show, which
old
is
school.
bringing
That's
the
right.
meme theology to bear in the podcast.
And Adam and I, this is going to be our paper submission to the International Society of Christian Apologetics, and there will be a forthcoming booklet on how to do meme theology. That's basically what we're going to be doing, and that'll allow both our theological presuppositions and our theological method and our method of apologetics to be melded with what I believe is somewhat a discipline that I have a little bit of credentials in, which is communication theory, mass media. Since I teach communication theory at Spurgeon College, I think that I'm somewhat qualified anyways to do a deconstruction of cultural artifacts, since that's what I teach my students to do. And that also just all begins with what we started doing here 5 years ago. And if you didn't read the Pathway article about us, there is an article in the Pathway about this great podcast. And we're grateful for the Pathway giving us the opportunity to get our name out there. And wasn't it cool that they actually posted my book there at the top?
Yeah. So if you get the Missouri Pathways anyway, if you open up to the very middle of everything, I mean, there was a big spread on apologetics in the Missouri Baptist Apologetics Network. So it's awesome that it got just the time was taken to talk about the Apologetics Network. So I'm not sure how it came about. I know we talked with Ben Hawkins, we've been doing this for 5 years.
That's right.
And we wanted to say, hey, we've been doing this for 5 years. And yes, we want to talk about you. And hopefully I'm glad that if that was what spurred on everything, talking to Will Hoffman about it. And then
Gabe Zalea.
Gabe Zalea, and then one of the newest members, and we haven't.
So bad I can't remember her name.
But that's the kind of way things sort of happen in the network anyway. We get surprised by new network members and everything. But the cool thing is we know, and so now we can have her on the show eventually, and bring her into the mix, because I know she's talking about youth. And apologetics, and that's
and children in apologetics.
Yeah,
so we definitely want to make sure we reach out to her. The other little cool thing that we can also officially begin to promote, and we will do more work on this, but there is a debate scheduled at the Missouri Baptist Annual Meeting. Adam and I will be on the 24th, on the evening of the 24th, in the Conference Hotel. Adam and I will debate the proposition. Goodness, I should have the proposition pulled up here. I apologize for not having it. But we will debate Gabe Zalea and Dennis Jackson on a really cool topic about apologetics methods, and we're just excited for that opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's resolve what is the best way to defend the faith. I think basically that's...
Yes.
That's what it is. Anyway, so it's really awesome. So if you are a part of if you go to the Missouri Baptist Convention this year, just like that Missouri Baptist Pathways newsletter, it's kind of like, Missouri Baptists are, or at least the bigwigs at the convention, we're going to have more of a presence there. And so we hope that, until we get there, to plant those seeds of, hey, that we have an apologetics network. We have people that like to either do very highly specific things or more general things, but we're all there to encourage one another. So we are people that want to travel, meet you, spend time with your churches, spend time with your youth groups, spend time with whatever sort of facet we can spend time with, and just encourage you guys to go out and really it's about everyday evangelism, the church being the church, and just equipping each other to do the ministry, right? And so God has given teachers and given gifts to people, right? We read in Ephesians, and so let's utilize those gifts and let's come together and support each other in those gifts. And so here's people that like to study. It could be worldview issues, it could be religions, whatever it is. We have people on the network, so get to know those people, have them over in your home, small groups, churches, whatever, campgrounds over the summer for the youth kids. That was awesome to be able to do that last year. But stuff like that. And so we're going to have a bigger presence, and hopefully more people get educated about what they have as Missouri Baptists.
By the way, the proposition is, what is the best way to defend the faith? And so that'll be on the 24th of October at the Missouri Baptist Annual Meeting in the Conference Hotel. It'll be awesome. Can't wait to actually do a debate at the Missouri Baptist Annual Meeting. Who would have thought of that 5 years ago, that was going to happen, and that we were going to be the participants in it. So we'll be taking the presuppositional side, whereas Dennis and Gabe will take the classical side. It's going to be a really great debate. We will have an audience Q&A. And so if you haven't made plans to go to the Missouri Baptist Annual Meeting in Branson, I want to encourage you to be there. It'll be a free debate, and it'll be a really cool opportunity for anyone who wants to know a little bit more about the network, and of course to actually see what I believe is going to be a really outstanding debate against two incredibly qualified opponents for us. It's going
to be really good. And like he said, his book was in the Missouri Baptist Pathways along with Rob Phillips's book. And it's like, whoa, dude, Dave, you're hitting the big time in the Missouri Baptist Convention. But anyway, just wanted to end up holding up. I finally got some physical copies of Did God Stutter, and it looks really awesome. It feels really awesome. It's got real pages. It's really cool. And so, it's really awesome to be able to read, the debate. The afterwords are really awesome, since I already had read the content and I wrote the foreword and everything, but I had not really gotten the afterwords from Phil, and then the post afterword basically from Dave on the subject material.
I wrote my afterword without having read his afterword. I didn't want to be like cheating and be like, let me respond to what he has to say. So at this particular point, you've read both of them, so I hope that what I said made sense in my afterword.
Oh no, I think you guys both really had what your problems were with each other. Now it's kind of putting those together, and I think that's what you guys can do if you get the book. So get the book. If you go to tagyouritministries.org/BRpub, you can still get it the PDF sent to you at a donation of any amount. You can also go on Amazon and search for it and get a physical copy from them. Or if you know me or have my email or whatever, I still got a couple of copies that I can ship out or hand out, just whatever. Just get at me about that. And then I will be doing another order soon to be able to have physical copies on our person. So if we don't have them, we will get them for that purpose anyway.
In our next writing project, we hope to have out sometime in the next 2 months, which is engaging the new Areopagus. We've been talking about that. Next week, we're going to spend a good amount of time working on that together, and we really hope to have that out too by this summer. That's really our plan, is to have that out by the end of June if we can, something like that. I think that that's all workable, and so you'll get another little piece from B&R Publishing hopefully very soon, and we've got other projects in the writing. I don't know if we're going to say the writing crock pot.
There's a few things, and so we'll get there when we get there. But there's definitely some cool irons in the fire, people we've been talking to, and some really interesting topics to talk about, especially on top of a few more things from Dave and I writing together after the Areopagus thing too. So there's some cool things that are on in the thing. We just don't want to announce it because then we'd have to work too much too soon.
Well, I will be freed up a little bit more to be able to do some more writing for us and some more focusing in on Tag Your It after pastoring will be my next piece. So, but I'm grateful for the opportunity that I've had to teach logic at Spurgeon College, and been a great semester. So all of that I again always attribute to the opportunity that I've had to get to do this, because many of those things that I do I would not have even thought about when it came to what I was going to do when I was just pastoring. So getting the podcast and getting opportunities has been a cool thing. So brings us to what we're going to deal with today. We've got a few things to deal with.
Yeah, so it's been a while since we've been to the meme studio, and as I said, Dave and I have vaults where we save things, and we had to open the vault. So Disney has a vault where it puts its stuff in for a little bit and brings it. We have a meme vault, and so we wanted to open up tonight, and we've got 3 memes we'll try to hit. We'll see how the time goes. If not, we have just another meme for later, so we'll just see what it goes. I love this sort of informal shot across the bow at memes. So first, we do need to establish, since we don't do this all the time, but for new listeners as they come in, what is meme theology? Why meme theology? What are we even talking about? Meme theology. So this is what will hopefully, as he said, we'll write a little booklet on this, because this is definitely booklet worthy in the future. But here, let's go. What is a meme? What is a meme, Dave?
Yeah, so a meme is essentially a cultural artifact, a rhetorical artifact, and so in our culture and in our day and age, how is it that people communicate? One of the things that is very clear in communication theory is that the medium is the message, is what McLuhan says, right? So in other words, the message about what the culture is the medium through which they communicate. Now, one of the things that we see in the development of social media, it first began as a picture and a little story about yourself, and you liked little things that people said as they gave brief little text updates. And then sometimes that expanded, right? So as we see social media begin to evolve, you start with very little simple things like Zanga, right? Which is one of the very first social media platforms. That expands into then Facebook, and of course, there were, of course, mediums that died. MySpace was one of the mediums that died. And you could even do a deconstruction of why did that platform die. And one of the reasons that platform died is because it didn't evolve, right? It stayed in the same way. It didn't update quick enough. That's why you always see updates on Facebook.
Yeah, it was very chaotic, and Facebook had a lot more privacy.
Yes.
Had a lot more privacy.
And so as Facebook began to develop, though, one of the things that became very popular was a picture and a few little words. And we've seen that actually become basically 2 different divergent platforms, where you have Twitter and you have Facebook. Now, part of the under part of Facebook began to be Instagram, which you take a picture and you say a few little things. Or maybe you took a picture and you put a few little words of text in it to explain something. That is essentially what we consider the modern meme. Now, of course, you have Snapchat, which is one of the larger memes, or not one of the larger platforms today, right? Or Instagram, again, the larger platforms, right, that began to give us just a little bit more of what's going on. And so if the medium is the message that is being communicated is that we show a picture and we say a few words, a few pithy phrases that will upset, excite, or cause some type of very intentional reaction, right? I'm making a statement and I don't care what you have to say back to it, right? What I am saying is a solid argument. Now, you could deconstruct that logically and say, okay, well, what is the argument? And we could draw that out in some type of categorical syllogism, but what is actually happening is the categorical syllogism is being implied, right? And so any meme you really actually could break down categorically. It's not necessary that you do that, but we always will assume that someone's trying to make a logically coherent statement, whether it's a deductive or an inductive statement, right? They're making an argument, right? And again, I'm of the position that I think all communication is argumentation. All communication is some type of a persuasive element. Like I'm intentionally trying to persuade someone.
And that's it. You're intentionally trying to persuade someone, but you don't actually know how to argue, and you actually don't know what you're posting. You just like what the thing says, and you post it up just because you want to make people mad, or you want to make people happy, or just whatever the meme content is. And so so we got these memes. We defined a meme here, and so I think it's actually time to go into what do we call it? The meme studio. We're in the meme studio, and let's get our first meme. And so, Dave, you're the one that sort of you shared this one, and you'd been talking about it on your Facebook timeline. So this one sort of you shared and exploded, and you got the reaction. You had to deal with it. So you get to drive this one because this one is your baby.
So actually, one of the things that we're always thinking about when we deal with a meme is the context in which it appears, right?
Yeah.
And so what first grabbed my thoughts on this was that it was actually a Christian who was sharing this. It was actually someone who said that they were a pastor that was sharing this. And I thought, good night in the morning. What do you mean by this, pastor? And I thought it was dishonest and disingenuous that he would actually share this as a Christian. I, in fact, encouraged him to remove it and offered commentary on as why you would do that. Now, if you're a lost person in sharing this, I can give you a little bit more leverage on why you might think this. But
and so and if you look at the meme, so for the podcast and everything, the meme is it says the same people who didn't fear COVID because of a 98% survival rate now fear a vaccine that has a 0.00009% risk of causing blood clots. Make it make sense. And so what you're saying is, because if you look at this meme, it doesn't really have a context per se.
That's right.
It's not saying anything about the person that's sharing it. So in this postmodern world, then if I see it, I go, okay, so this must be coming from the person who posted it.
Yeah, well,
but
you
then
have to
again,
remember,
when you think about
of course,
it,
in our postmodern world, right?
Yeah.
If you buy into the mindset of people like Derrida or particularly Roland Barthes, right, in his essay, The Death of the Author, essentially he advocates that everything is interpretive, right? It doesn't matter the intentions of the author. What matters is how I respond to it. Again, we live in a very postmodern age, right?
Yeah.
So context in the what I would say is the absurdity of the modern mind. Context doesn't matter. Now, as a Christian and from a Christian worldview, we would say that context is king, right? Mm-hmm. We want to understand what was actually being said in the original context.
Yeah.
So if you deal with it within the absurdity, if you step into the worldview of the absurd, right, which is not a very long journey, actually, because we're immersed in it all the time. So if we step into the absurdity of the postmodern world, context doesn't matter. I can import whatever context I want. I think that that's being dishonest, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But if you do that, just to demonstrate, if you answer a fool according to his folly, right, as we're told to do, you begin to say, well, here is the context in which I read this. Now, I think from a Christian worldview, when we deal with meme theology in particular, we actually want to do both. We want to step into the context of the absurd, and then we want to step back into the real worldview that's grounded on the foundation of God's word and interpret that. So when we step into the absurd, this actually says something slightly different than it does in the world that is grounded in the Christian worldview. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, so let's step into the absurd. That's the big deal. And so like if we're stepping into the absurd, whenever you say the term absurd, if you're going to be rational, if you're going to be logical, it cannot be arbitrary.
That's right.
So for the first thing is we're stepping into the absurd. We're stepping into the arbitrary. So who cares? Who cares that whoever didn't fear the fear the virus, and if they wanted to use this argument, this 0.00009% blood clot thing, to then be afraid of it, well, the thing is, they're being arbitrary. Why are you mad? If you're being arbitrary, why can't they? That's the sauce for the goose, sauce for the gander sort of thing, and that's what relativism produces. But that's the point. You can't live in that world. But if that's your world, live with it. If it's not your world, then why are you acting as though this is actually meaningful argument? What are you trying to do? Like, you're just pointing, like, are you just Captain Obvious?
But then you also step into another issue, because when you step into a postmodern world, one of the things that you step into is, I call it theater of the absurd, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Where everything is power structures, right?
Yeah.
Inherently linked to any knowledgeable understanding of this would be that someone has utilized colonistic or culinary mindsets, and I don't mean that in the culinary as if you colonialist mindset, because objective science and objective scientific information and data is based in, according to this same worldview, a colonist mindset, right? A Western colonist mindset. We can't trust objective scientific knowledge. Oh, but we can do it whenever we want. But if you actually reject that idea that objective scientific evidence is simply a power structure at play, then who cares about what data says? Who cares what these oppressive powers say? So you can't be consistent with your worldview even to make sense of this. You have to borrow from a worldview where objective scientific method actually makes sense. So to make your argument have teeth, you have to reject your foundational assumptions about power structures. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So then...
So you basically, right now, Fauci, CDC, they get a free pass from being an oppressive power structure.
Exactly.
Just kind of like, again, in the abortion side that we talked about, why does Planned Parenthood get a free pass? Because they are literally an institution of oppression, especially of Black people.
And things like the scientific method are constructs from a westernized colonist mindset that says, well, I need to reject any objective data science because that's white oppressive people who are Western civilization importing their power structures on me. So that's where this becomes, even if you step into the theater of absurd, where do you stop? Like, where do you stop? And so this actually doesn't even say anything because you have to reject the scientific method.
Again, like, you're just pointing out what people are doing.
Bingo.
But that's all you got is like, okay, the same, but I mean, we can get into what the same is whenever we step out of the absurd. But, basically all you're doing is pointing out what's happening. And then, you don't have anything to say after. I mean, you have the ability to, but that doesn't mean it's coherent. That doesn't mean it actually, I have to care about it or anybody has to care. Again, if you're going to be arbitrary, then rationality is out the window and we can't have the conversation. And that worldview isn't coherent when it comes to actually having a coherent case to complain that if there are people out there that did not fear the virus, but now they're fearing the small percent of getting a blood clot. Again, if it's arbitrary, they're just arbitrarily going around and brain fizzing as they are doing based on certain stimuli, because that's all it is. If they're just matter and motion governed by time and chance, they're just being arbitrary. Who cares? It's the so what. So what? That's all that you got.
But then in the meme they say make sense.
Yeah, make it make sense.
Make
Why?
it make sense. Make sense to who?
Yeah, again.
Who is it to make sense to?
Yeah.
Because what you're doing, again, is appealing to some standard which you can't account for, which you can't even defer back to. What if it makes perfect sense? Who is to say that it should make sense to anyone? To say that it should make sense to you, therefore creates a power structure where you are might by right. Yeah. And that, again, is oppressive and, of course, perpetuates the oppressive regimes you are attempting to topple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
But yeah, and it's one of those things, they asked though, make it make sense. And we've said, well, we can make it make sense. We can explain it by telling you, so what, it doesn't make sense. And so, if you're sharing this as somebody in whatever arbitrary worldview, you're asking for something and only demonstrating that you can't live in your world, that you actually do not believe your world exists. Yes. And you haven't accepted the fact that your world exists, if it does.
And here's the other little element of that I think is incredibly important. Even putting forward argumentation in a postmodern worldview does not make sense for one to do, because it presupposes that words have meaning, that numbers have meaning, and there is some type of position worth rationalizing others to. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and I mean, like, let's just say it's like, we'll just say the basic presupposition is survival.
Yeah.
And self-interest. Then it's just this person's sharing this to be liked by other people so that they don't get disliked, so they have a better opportunity to be in the social sphere of people to do what they need to do to survive. It's food, sexual relationships, whatever it is to survive and just spread your genes.
That's right.
That's basically the only reason that I can say this would be shared, but still you're still end up with, so what? You don't have to exist. You don't have to survive. The world still spins. Everything will go into, thermodynamic disintegration.
Well,
so
and here's the issue. So when you do meme theology, I think it's always important that we understand what memes are. We understand how indoctrinated actually our mind is to them, because we often share them without thinking or trying to rationalize or understand the argument that's being put forward.
Something we need to trademark. Think before you meme.
That's right.
TM or something.
Maybe that's the name of the paper, right?
Think before you meme.
Yeah. And so the next little piece is, once you step into the absurdity of the mindset, once you answer a fool according to his folly, then I think you step back out and then you stand on Scripture as its ground.
Yeah.
And that's the next little piece that I think is important for one to be able to do. So when it says the same people who don't fear COVID because of 98% survival rate now fear a vaccine that has 0.00009% chance of causing blood clots. Okay, who are people? Yeah. Who are the same people? Now that begins to presuppose that there's a group of individuals that are actually somehow defined in this group.
Yeah.
Who is that group? The meme does not give us any opportunity to actually define who those are.
It's just the group that it says the same group. So it's the group that said that they didn't fear COVID because of 98% survival rate, which that is one of a few reasons of mine.
Yeah.
And also yours. So now you and me, I guess, in this would fit the criteria of being the same people.
There you go.
That
we have now been adopted into this. Again, the meme is sent with a purpose to try to make an argument. So it's now, I believe, given some definitive terms, which we can do from a Christian worldview. We can say from a Christian worldview that words have meaning, that terms have a objective definition, right? That actually is incorporated, and I would actually say implied, in every meme. And so we're now in this, and we are now generalized as those individuals who are not getting the COVID vaccine because we're fearful that the vaccine might kill us because of this 0.009% chance of risk.
So 1.1, we're talking about standing on Scripture, right? The Bible, God's revelation. We're supposed to be for truth, and we are not to lie to people. Thou shalt not lie, right? That reflects God who cannot lie.
That's right.
His holiness in the law.
Bingo.
And so whenever you do this and you say the same people who are not afraid of COVID are now fearing the vaccine, well, you've lied, because we are people that weren't afraid of the virus because, well, we had brains, and we go, well, for one, we're young. If we do get it, it's not going to ruin us, and we've got to feed our families. He's a minister. He's got people he's got to minister to, and he would rather minister to people as they're dying and not worry about getting it, and he would die with his brothers and sisters that he is a shepherd over, because he knows where he's going. He knows who his Lord is, and his Lord would be pleased. So again, that we're standing here now. Don't go anywhere else. So if we're geared for truth, this argument already from the outset fails on the fallacy of sweeping generalization.
Yes. Do not fear, for I am your God. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not fear, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah 41:10. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everyting by prayer and petition with thanksgiving present your request to God. For the peace of God which surpasses all understanding.
You've got to be a good steward of your body. Well, wait a second. I think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego still stood up instead of bowing down, even though they already knew they were going to go into furnace. And you can say, well, guys, what about your bodies? What about being a good steward of your life? Well, sometimes being a good steward of your life is putting yourself at risk for your brothers and sisters underneath what God has called you to. And so you can't go into an immanent worldview. You always have to keep heaven and earth in view as two things that are together because, well, of Jesus Christ being the God-man.
And Adam, this is a key piece, and it's something that I know you and I are completely in agreement on. And I'm making that assumption because I know that both you and I do not fear man, we fear God.
Yeah.
Our primary fear should be God. The fear of God is the beginning of knowledge, Proverbs 1:7, right? But further, when the early church was threatened, do not preach the gospel, right? When Peter and John walk into Jerusalem and they go into the temple, and there is a lame man, a man born lame, right? And they heal him. And then the Sanhedrin and the religious leaders of that day grab Peter and John and they say, don't preach the gospel. What is it that they say in Acts chapter 4? Very, very clearly. Whether it is right in the sight of God to listen to you rather than to God, you must be the judge, for we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard. And then, very clearly, when they go back to the church actually says this amazing thing, right? They begin to say in verse 29 of chapter 4, now, Lord, look upon their threats and grant your servants to continue to speak your word with all boldness, right?
Yes.
Again, when Paul is stoned, right, outside of Iconium, he walks back in the next day, preaches the gospel, and leaves, right? Christians are told to proclaim the gospel in all context, no matter what it is. We are to gather on the Lord's day for worship. And so the real question is, do we fear a virus or do we fear God? Well, again, the consistent Christian knows the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. You say, oh, well, that might get you sick. Well, so be it. So be it. The Christian definitely wants to protect themselves, but they want to honor God. They want to do what God has commanded them to do in all settings, in all times. Again, if you look at the bubonic plague, how did the church respond to that? They went and preached the gospel. When you look at Spurgeon's life, right, when there was this massive cholera outbreak, what did he do? He exhausted himself from going from bedside to bedside to proclaim the gospel to people. Christians are called to do that same thing. So when you say in this meme that it's the same people who fear COVID, it's not the people who fear COVID. We don't fear COVID.
Yeah, well, it's saying that the people who don't fear COVID.
That's right.
But they're saying that it's the vaccine that we're now fearing because of a small chance of we're not afraid because of the small chance of the virus and what it can do to you, but we are afraid of the small chance of the vaccine giving us the blood clots. But again, we've already said it's a sweeping generalization for one, and that is not the reason. Even though I don't want to get the vaccine, but I have other reasons, and it's not the blood clot thing. I think that is a very stupid argument. To get the vaccine, because again, I am not an anti-vaxxer.
No,
I have a brain, and I do want the science. And the funny thing is, even though this is just an oversimplification of the issue, but whenever you call something Project Warp Speed or whatever, I'm sorry, I don't take that seriously, because also time is a scientific matter, and I believe that there should be more time on this so we can see the results. And I do, and I mean, people can make themselves guinea pigs if they want, and I don't want to say that pejoratively, but they can make themselves the test subjects if they want. I don't want to. And I think it's a part of the God-given Christian conscience that I have, that I should not be demeaned. I have dignity. And we can still exist as brothers and sisters in Christ if we're in the church. And we don't have to fight over this. You can have it or not have it. And I think that's a beautiful thing because of the gospel, that we can exist with these conscious issues as brother and sister, and not let that be the dividing line between us. But the thing is that's not why the people that didn't fear a lot of I mean, there might be people that this might be the drumbeat argument, but it's a dumb argument. I'll say that, but I'm going to say the majority. This is not the issue. What they have with the vaccine. I'm going to say that most informed people are like, well, for one, we can bring up the fact that we don't want to feed the monster of the abortion machine.
There you go.
Though
And that is my primary
lines,
piece
yeah,
there.
Yeah, that's the primary piece with it. Though that is we've already dealt with this. Yes, they weren't aborted for the vaccine, but it's a consequent because of, you're still feeding it. You're still saying like, I'm okay after some arbitrary amount of time that we've aborted a fetus for it to be used for whatever, even though it wasn't aborted for that purpose. That's just an arbitrary thing. Again, if you're going to be rational, you can't be arbitrary.
And here is the analogy that someone brought up, right? And I want to, again, state, I believe in Christian liberty on this. I believe in your convictions and doing what you have done according to your convictions, right? So, and I think that it's okay that I use a personal example. I have a good friend from my church who I just have great respect for, outstanding guy, really good guy. He'd said he got the vaccine. He had gotten COVID and he got the vaccine. He said, well, my parents wanted me to get the vaccine because they were very fearful. Now you have a little bit of a crossroads. You have a honor your mother and father, and you have, again, from the same 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill. I'm not going to step into that mindset. I don't have to. Now, if he were to come to me again, I would put that back on him. Brother, act according to your convictions on this. I'm not going to berate you. However, the great thing is he didn't berate me and say, oh, your position on abortion is so stupid. Why would you do that? Not at all. A Christian convictional issue. So as Christians, we're not going to attack each other on this by any means. I think that that's a very poor thing to do. But what is my major reason? Again, two of them. Number one, it is that we don't know the long-term consequences. That's a reality. As a thinking person who actually has a master's degree in research methodology, I'm not going to sit around and become or allow myself to become a test on this, right? I'm not going to let myself become the rat in the lab, right? And I don't say that pejoratively, but seriously, I'm not going to let myself be someone who this is tested on, right? I'm not going to allow my children or my spouse to have this done as a test on them. Again, if you're getting the vaccine, you would say, well, it's gone through a few cycles of tests. Yeah, it has. We know no long-term consequences of this. That is not anything that we have any long-term test on. Things like this don't just develop overnight. Yeah. Except in this case, they did develop overnight. So I don't want to become a test. But the other thing is, I don't want to allow myself, as you stated so clearly, to be part of the abortion machine. And why would I say such a thing? Well, if you've done the research, and of course we have done the research, you can see on places like health.nd.gov, we note very clearly that it states historical fetal cell lines were derived in the 1960s and 70s from 2 elective abortions and have been used to create vaccines for diseases such as hepatitis, rubella, and rabies. Abortions from which these fetal cells were obtained were elective and were not done for the purpose of vaccine development. Okay, great. And here is the analogy that was given to me. I was told if there was a murder victim and we were able to harvest some of their organs to save lives, wouldn't that be good? You bet. Those lives that were saved were excellent, but we would still do justice and try to hunt down the murderer. In the case of these fetal cells, that's not happened. Now, you can, as a Christian, choose to look past that and say, yeah, but I'm so far removed. You are more than welcome to do that. I disagree with that action because my conviction is that abortion is always wrong. The same God who said, do not lie, honor your father and mother, said, do not kill.
Do not murder. Do not murder. And this is, an abortion is murder. And we got to keep on saying that. It is murder, it is murder, it is murder. And nobody's going after the murderers because of emotional ties. Like, I'm sorry, women premeditate murder on another human being when they do this. Now, am I saying is that all cases? No, I'm going to say most cases. I'm thinking that we can actually utilize God's law and come up with a trial and see if somebody has been coerced, has been lied to, has been put in a position where they had no malicious intent but did it anyway because of other issues. And we can go through that. You know, this is a hypothetical world that we're in right now, but when it really happens, we can do things. We should still go by all of God's law to determine this. But abortion is murder. and nobody's going after whoever in the 60s and 70s aborted those babies, even though that wasn't for vaccine purposes, possibly. Still, they murdered babies.
Yes.
And now we're having, well, since they're murdered, we'll just go ahead and use them. It's like, no. Can we actually use our human ingenuity to do something different? Because apparently us humans think we're pretty awesome, so it seems like we can do something without them.
And just so anyone knows, health.nd.gov, were the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines developed using fetal cell lines? Early in the development of the mRNA vaccine technology, fetal cells were used for proof of concept to demonstrate how cells could take up mRNA and produce SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. Then you go down. Was Johnson & Johnson? There's 3 major vaccines, right? Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Pharmaceutical, COVID-19's developed using fetal cells. The non-replicating viral sector vaccine produced by Johnson & Johnson did require the use of fetal cells, specifically PER.C6, in order to produce and manufacture the vaccine. All of the vaccines on the market are using fetal cells or fetal cell lines in their development. Every major publication will tell you that's not the argument. If someone tells you that that's not the argument, they're not telling you the whole truth. This is, again, health.nd.gov. And this isn't the only place that you can find that. We did just a little bit of research and found these things. So the real question is, are you going to arbitrarily look past the murder of these children and say, I didn't murder them. That's okay. I'll get the vaccine. If that is where your Christian liberty leads you, that is fine.
Again,
that's
the
not
dividing
our
line
argument.
is Jesus Christ. And so we have to make sure that that's what we're dividing over. Jesus is offensive, but he's also the reconciler of everybody. So that's the issue. And so we don't do this to, and I hope you don't hear us
throwing stones at anyone
who's
taken it.
We're asking the question.
We're also saying, here's our position.
Yes.
And it's not some ill-conceived, fearful position. No. Fear is what causes you to shut down an entire country over a virus that has a 96% chance survival rate.
Yeah.
That's fear. Fear is what causes you to shut down an entire country and, again, cause incredible amounts of suicide, incredible amounts of different marital problems that we've seen, incredible amounts of businesses being shut down. That's what fear causes you to do. Fear of man and fear of a virus causes you to do.
So, and I would just say, like on the last little thing here, it says, make it make sense. So let's make it make sense. If this is the case that the same people who don't fear COVID because of a 98% survival rate now fear a vaccine that has a 0.000009 risk of causing blood clots, you know how to make sense of that? People are hypocrites. People will use anything to do what they want to do and be arbitrary.
There you go.
So there's the other side of it. So make it make sense. In a Christian worldview, it makes sense why you would see this. But how do you interpret that? Why is it? Because people want to divide and fight. And they need to be reunited in Jesus Christ, to where we can have these maybe differences of opinion, and it's not this why we fear the vaccine, but we can still love one another and bear with one another, keeping each other and being jealous for each other's freedom of consciences, for one, and actually live as best as sinners can live in a world as Christ, as we are made into the image of Christ, as he's promised to do. So that's how you make sense of why you see this. Why are people being arbitrary? And so I think that makes sense of what you're seeing, if this is true. But then again, if you are a Christian and you actually think this is a good argument, please stop sharing, because it's not. And it's only going to be divisive. And we need to really, really be careful about what we share. Think before you meme, because this is a very divisive meme.
Yes. Yeah, right on.
Yeah. So we've got
Sorry, we went a little longer.
We went
on
long
that
on that. Well, you were prepared on that one. But let's go to the next meme. And if we don't get to the third meme, well, that just means we get another meme theology time anyway. So I'm not too mad about that. But this is a meme that I saw on a few Facebook pages within the past couple of weeks. But this is being a trans parent. And some advice to the possible transsexual parent anyway here. So it says, please listen to your child. If they ask you to call them something different, try. And if they tell you they are a different gender than what they were assigned at birth, respect them. I'm going to go over to a different place to read it.
No problem.
So respect that. Even if they, let me just start over again since I blocked it for the podcast, folks. Anyway, but it says to parents of possibly trans kids, please listen to your child. If they ask you to call them something different, try. If they tell you they are a different gender than what they were assigned at birth, respect that. Even if they are young, even if you think it won't last, even if you are worried for their safety and well-being, understand that this took a lot of courage for them to share with you. And they wouldn't be saying it if they didn't legitimately feel that way. And, the one thing that kills me on this, it's a false dichotomy. It's an ununderstanding of a lot of people, especially, again, in Dave and I's milieu of folks, which is Christianity. And I understand that there are hypocrites that would still need to grow even to agree with us on this issue. But this meme is really, this one is a really offensive meme. I understand. I'm not offended by the fact that it happened. It's offensive meme, but I'm not offended because I expect it. So it's not a surprise that something like this would be written. But the thing is, if you look at the very end of the meme that it says, let's see, it took a lot of courage for them to share with you this information, and that they wouldn't be saying it if they didn't legitimately feel that way. I totally get it. Totally get it. You know what? I would be very happy if my kids, if they were struggling with something like this, I would be happy that they would tell me that they felt this way. I would say thank you for actually being open and honest and not suffering in silence on this issue, thinking that I'm some sort of monster that you can't talk about this kind of stuff with. So, okay, I agree there. That's great information. That's what needs to be said. And I would say that in the Christian community, there would be people that this would need to be talked about. What would you do and how would you respond? And I think the right response is thank you for sharing that with me. And understanding that they did take a lot of courage to do so, and thanking them for that and reinforcing the courage to do that. But here's the deal. If they ask you to call them something different, try. Why? What, based on what? Why do they feel different? If they tell you that they're a different gender than what they are assigned at birth, respect that. Why should I respect that? Is it true? Should I raise my kids up to be in truth, or to be okay to be deluded? I don't find that good to actually raise my kid to be in a delusion.
Yeah.
You were telling me that the other day or yesterday, your kid was legitimately acting like a dog and just kept on
he said he was a dog. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Happens a few times. He tells me that he's Bowser every once in a while.
Yeah.
So for that, like I always say, step into the absurdity.
Yeah.
Right. So when I step into the absurdity, the first thing that I have a problem with is it presupposes a nuclear family. It presupposes the category of parent, which if you reject the nuclear family, right, there's some type of a relationship within that family. Well, wait a second. We've got an issue. The parent-child distinctive categorical difference. Wait a second. That is an oppressive idea.
Yeah.
Why is this not just another sexual partner?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. And
it
this
presupposes some type of authority on the part of the parents, but it's rejected that distinctive category.
Yeah, and this is the issue. This does come from a worldview of equality, and I'm going to put that in quotes because we are about equity. We are about a certain kind of equality, but it comes with a definition that actually is meaningful.
Bingo.
And so from this worldview, we're all just particles in motion, governed by time and chance. We're all just happenstance beings, and we're all autonomous.
But
and so there is no, and so I've been told there's no hierarchies in nature. Okay, why are you appealing to the expert then? Oh, so the expert, whenever you need it, gets to be put in a higher category that I have to submit to, since this person's quoting that expert, since they're not the expert. So you see that's the absurd problem here. But so here, basically, to parents of possibly trans kids, you're just telling them stop being a parent.
Exactly. You're telling them that their role is not that of authority any longer. Their role is that of only affirmation. I'm sorry, I'm not going to affirm my child to run in the street, but what if my child identifies as a streetwalker? What if my child identifies as a turtle? Am I no longer allowed to tell my child that will kill you? All of that authority is, if you follow this to its natural conclusion, the parent-child distinctive category is gone, because the child could identify as my parent. And so I'm now supposed to just listen to them. They now are the authoritative figure. I am not. Wait, what do I do? What does my autonomy do in any of this? When you jump actually with both feet into that worldview, you can't make anything of it. Why listen? Your child, who is your child and what is not your child? If a community truly raises a family, well, then that child over across the street is my child. They can come live with me. But wait a second. Likewise, they're whatever I want them to be. Categorically, I can identify them as whatever I want. And who's to say that they actually even have to listen to me or to what they want to listen to?
Yeah, why does the kid have to care what the parent says and what the parent accepts or does not accept? The kid just be like, if you accept me, great. If you don't accept me, I'm out of here. They're an autonomous being. They should be able to go out there and find a job if they want. But then again, I guess a job is an oppressive, hierarchical sort of machine of the problem. And so, so again, like, we're talking an absurdity here. Why?
Yeah.
Because we're in absurdity.
That's right. And then you say, even if they're a different gender, what is gender?
Yeah.
It's a social construct.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Why would I even care about gender?
Yeah, again, that's the problem of putting the T in the LGBTQ, whatever, because the T says it doesn't matter. Like, it wants to matter gender, but then again, it doesn't matter. And so that's the absurdity of the T in there, is because it totally throws the wrench, because the other ones accept a norm, and it's just the reverse of that norm, or however. The T sort of accepts norms, but then doesn't want to. So it's the, I can't commit. I'm not going to be dogmatic, but then they're dogmatic. Well, so that's the issue.
And then there's this element that they were assigned at birth. If I've bought into the trans argument, I didn't assign my child any gender at birth, because gender is arbitrary. Gender is created.
Yeah, but then doctors, are they assigning anything at birth? Aren't they just observing something and writing something? So were you assigned, or did you actually did you assign the doctor to write down whatever? So
exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And then, of course, what's this idea of respect that? What does it mean to respect? I mean, very seriously, as a Christian, we recognize that terms have meaning. But when I use the term respect, I don't know that I mean it in the Aretha Franklin, RESPECT, find out what it means to me. Actually, I'm always trying to find out what respect means. Yeah. How can I respect anything if that's a standard that's always moving? From this categorical position, from jumping both feet into absurdity, I might feel like I'm respecting something, and that's what actually matters, my arbitrary standard, because I am autonomous and I can define whatever I want as respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the issue, is how am I supposed to take this? I'm going to take this from the current situation that we're in the context that we're in. And it is that equality issue. There's no hierarchies. It's, we're trying to tear down even the family. So, it's like, once they're out of the womb, they should be their own autonomous self. But then again, you got people at Harvard going, well, no, those are societies. They're underneath the society's control. They shouldn't be under the parents' control. So they can't even understand. Again, nature abhors a vacuum. So it's either that baby that comes out of their mother instantaneously becomes their own person, and the baby should be able, like the parents just should go, I can throw you out now, or if you could crawl and find a job or find sustenance or whatever, that should be fine. The only thing is we're not going to live that way, and you're going to expose your absurdity and the fact that you can't live in a consistent way with the way from the starting points you're making about who a person is, what a person is, and the rules and what reality of living in a society is. And so
I was just thinking, what if your kid identifies as an electrician and wants to stick a fork into an outlet?
Yeah.
You're not going to let that happen.
I'm a scientist, and I need to know this because I only believe I can only know things through empirical evidence, which the only empirical evidence I can gather is sticking a fork in this, and you have to let me. I don't know. I don't know.
So then I always think, again, we've deconstructed it from jumping both feet into the worldview. We're turning it back to a Christian worldview.
Yeah. And it's one of those
Here's
things.
how it only makes sense.
Yeah,
and here's how we can make sense of it.
Yeah, if they ask you to call them something different, try. Okay, I can do a nickname, but that doesn't change the person. That doesn't change the person at all.
Or their DNA makeup.
Yeah, or DNA makeup. But if they tell you that they're a different gender than what they were assigned at birth, so that's actually what they're talking about when that's when to call them something different.
Yes.
Because they want a different name, because the more prime issue is that they feel their gender has changed, or that they are different than what their body, the objective reality that we all see is. And so if they're a different gender than what they are assigned at birth, respect that. And it's one of those things of, why do I have to respect that? That draws at the false dichotomy. If I don't respect that, I hate them. And it's like,
that's right.
Wait a second. No, I love them, and I want them to be in truth. Again, the last meme, the first thing I said was, we are people of truth.
That's right. And
so if you're a Christian and you're following Christ, who is the truth, who is God incarnate, who is God and man, who never rejected the Old Testament scriptures, but exegeted them for us because we're dense. That's what he came to do, was not to change anything, but to establish things even more. And now we have more light because of Christ. And that's why Tyre and Sidon will have it less than what we will.
That's right.
On Judgment Day. But I respect the person made in the Imago Dei. I'm not going to downgrade their dignity, but I'm going to uphold their dignity, be going, no, you're not. You're not what you think you are.
And that is where the Christian worldview and the definition of what it means to respect has to be grounded in what God has revealed.
Yeah, and it's not respecting their self-professed idea of themselves, but it's taking that and going, there might be a problem, and I respect you, and let's go get this worked out.
That's right.
Let's seek professional help if we need to, because your feelings don't determine or make facts. And so what is it about your feelings? And so we can talk about the gospel, we can be gracious and all this kind of stuff, but we have to get to the truth, and we have to raise our kids in truth. Now, again, if they came to me saying these kind of things, I would encourage them. So you can't draw that false dichotomy either. That is not true. I can tell them that I love them, that I'm proud that they told me, that they're not suffering in silence. And now we can actually deal with it. But to respect them is to not let them pretend and then reinforce that pretending to where they feel that it's reality, because it's not. And in the long game, it's not going to actually be respectful that I do that. And it's not going to be for their safety, and it's not going to be for their well-being, because they will end up having depression. And it's not going to be because you're going to try to blame the Christians for going, well, they killed themselves because of you guys. It's like, no, it's because they're messed up and you didn't help them.
You just made it worse. Mm-hmm. You poured gasoline on the fire. You let them live in a false reality, destroy and mutilate their body, and then they said it's not worth it. I've already destroyed myself enough. Again, what we don't get is frequently the voice of those individuals who thought they were another gender, mutilated their bodies, and actually realized and came to Christ and realized that they were not what they said they were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, it's like we can take that back down to our discussion with Samson.
That's right.
Whenever we talk to him, the thing is, a lot of people think he's a lonely dude, and people that are still struggling with same-sex attraction, that if you don't allow them to get married, it's like, but they don't have anybody to love. They don't. And it's like, wait a second, no, this guy has a community that loves him.
I've seen him go on tons of friends. Pictures of him going on vacations with families.
He's having a good time communally. And guess what? All you're doing is saying that love is a reduction of having sex. That's all you're saying love is. So who's reductionist now, for one? But the thing is he is fulfilled in his friendships because he is fulfilled in Jesus Christ. And he understands that the way he is sin, but he knows he is being made every day more like Christ through it.
Yeah. Because
Christ never promised us not suffering. We are going to suffer. We are going to endure these things, and we're going to find out more about him, living like him through suffering. And one day, eventually, we have the treasure that is being kept for us in heaven, that we've been given the Spirit to endure these things right now as a guarantee. And we have hope in the future that extends into the now. That's inaugurated eschatology right there, that we have the hope to look forward to because of what God is doing now and because the kingdom is here. So, these kind of things just miss the mark on that, but I know that people that would call themselves Christians, these would be like the venues Christians, and I'll go ahead and say that now, but these are apostate. This is an apostate mindset.
Yes. Both memes are apostate mindset.
Yeah.
Because they reject the sufficiency of Scripture. They reject the reality that God has spoken and you can understand it. They want to arbitrarily apply what Scripture says and then throw on some interpretive lens that is foreign to the teaching of Scripture itself.
Yeah.
Which is a slippery slope, because then you begin to redefine everything that Scripture says.
Yeah. And so, we have spent an hour here, and I know that we wanted to get to 3 memes, but what we'll do is we'll save the third one because it's a good one that'll take a while.
Yeah,
that we can definitely put a lot of scripture, a lot of gospel into, and deal with it on that. So we'll stick with those 2 memes anyway, and so that's helpful to finalize things when it gets to the podcast and YouTube channel and everything. But we will end up cutting this off right now for the show and get on to the next one.
That's right.
For next week's episode anyway that we'll be uploading. But anyway, with that said, this is the Taccurate Podcast. I'm Ray.
And I am Dave, in studio.
Yes, and Soli
Deo
Gloria.